and they knew that our numbers were growing. So they started to organise, and the first victim for their smears was a very brilliant comrade, perhaps the best of us, Mahmoud Mirza, who stood for the NEC, and he got the largest number of nominations than any other person, who the night before the vote was open, you know what I'm going to say? He got an email and a phone call from a journalist. And the journalist said, "Oh, Mr. Mirza, you know you're suspended. This is happening to a lot of us. The press know, because these people in there tell the press. And they tell social media before they tell the very people whose lives they are ruining." So Mahmoud was a dead cert to win, and they eliminated him, and that's what they're doing. It is a purge. Do not be mistaken, it is a purge. And they're coming for you and me, and when they're done with you and me, it will be JVL, it will be Ken Loach. I don't know if they'll touch Momentum and the Socialist Campaign Group. Oh, that's the effect I have on Starmer. I don't know if they'll touch Momentum and the Socialist Campaign Group, because we can't see them. We can't hear them very often. But what we're going to do in Newham, as the best activists that can mobilise hundreds of people, is we are not giving up. We are the Labour Party. We are the Socialists. So we have Newham Socialist Labour. We meet weekly. Comrades come together on a Zoom. Hopefully we'll be able to begin to meet actually in our new premises. Oh yeah, we mean business. We're going to get a premises, comrades. We are still fighting. We are doing work, stopping evictions, stopping Centene taking over GP surgeries. And we're still fighting against academisation, even though our Labour Council, 60 Labour councillors, 2 Labour MPs, solid. They passed a motion saying they're against academies. It's on a dusty shelf somewhere in the town hall because they're not standing up against it. We're mobilising parents. Keir Hardie was elected as the first Labour MP for West Ham in 1892. We have a proud history. The Labour Party started with a Keir. It's ending with a Keir. And we've got to claim the Labour Party and the comrades, galvanise them, set up socialist labour organisations all across the country. Join us, solidarity.
Next we're going to hear from Tina Berkman, who's speaking from Labour Against Witch Hunt. Thank you, Tina.
Hello, comrades. Labour Against the Witch Hunt was set up in 2017 when it was very clear very quickly that the right and the Labour Party would never, ever accept Corbyn as the leader. And that the best way to get rid of him is, you know what, accuse him of being an anti-Semite and his supporters. Corbyn made, unfortunately, the fatal mistake of not calling out that lie right from the start, but accepted it. And I think that has get us into a bit of a position that we're in now, unfortunately. So this was the start of the anti-Semitism smear campaign, as we called it, and which basically engulfs anybody who says anything critical of Israel. It's rather ironic now that Starmer is now proposing to automatically expel, without any hearing, without any due process, without any right of appeal, a few thousand Labour Party members simply because they were standing in solidarity with those who were previously unfairly suspended and expelled. It's an extreme injustice that is carrying on. Of course, they don't know who's a member of ours, of Labour Against the Witch Hunt or a Labour in Exile network. We're not giving out databases to the Labour Party, don't worry about that. But what is likely to happen is the extension of the guilty by association principle, which basically means you're standing next to somebody who's been accused as an anti-Semite, that makes you an anti-Semite. It's also, we've seen, of course, the denialism, a new charge of denialism will be extended. If you deny that the Labour Party has a huge problem with anti-Semitism, ipso facto, you're an anti-Semite, which beggars any kind of belief. It's also absolutely irrational and hasn't got any point of evidence to it at all. So we are we're quite right to keep banging on about the witch hunt, because what we've seen today is a culmination of it, another climax in the witch hunt against the left. I'm really pleased to say that a number of left groups have gotten together to fight against this latest stage, with Jewish Voice for Labour, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, Labour Left Alliance, and a number of other groups, and support is flooding in. We've had dozens of new members joining Labour Against the Witch Hunt. For example, if you haven't done so, please join us. We are continuing to fight, and we're continuing to stay. So this is very much reminding us of the Salem witch hunt, I think. Chris Williamson was one of those victims. By denying that there's a huge problem, it made him a witch himself. We cannot stress enough how serious the situation at the moment is in the Labour Party and beyond. That's the tragedy. It's going far, far beyond the Labour Party. I have no doubt that other groups will be added to this list of proscribed organizations very soon. This is just the first round. As the speaker in front of me has said, where is Momentum today, the biggest organization of the left? They've put out a statement which, to call it mealy-mouthed is being very, very generous to them. Where is the Campaign for Labour Party Democracy? Where's the Socialist Campaign Group of Labour MPs? Where are they? They're keeping stum. And this is the time really to fight and speak. If you don't speak now, when are you actually going to fight? This does remind me of this, the poem by Pastor Niemöller. First they came, for the Marxists, for the anti-witch hunt campaigners, for the awkward squad. But I'm not one of them, am I? I'm going to keep nicely and quiet in the background. Nothing's going to happen to me. Well, you're wrong, because all those people who would have defended you in Momentum and the others are gone. They will be gone from the Labour Party if you don't fight with us now. So Keir Starmer is clearly trying to make the Labour Party into a safe space from capitalism point of view, a second 11 that can take over if Bojo totally loses the plot, and it's only a matter of time, isn't it? We've seen in the last year very, very dangerous silencing of free speech and democracy in the whole Labour movement, not just the Labour Party. We have branches being suspended for simply discussing the question of free speech, the EHRC report, the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn. That gets you suspended these days. It's an outrage. False charges of anti-Semitism have been used to prevent any discussion or expression of solidarity with the Palestinians. And that's, of course, what this is really about. It's to keep quiet on Israel and Palestine. We hear that the motion states that has been discussed today, not actually here, it's an online meeting, that membership of our four groups is incompatible with membership of the Labour Party. But the purpose of these constitutional rules is to exclude people who campaign against the Labour Party. And none of our organizations do that. The same cannot be said, I should stress, of the right-wing factions within the Labour Party. Progress, Labour First, Jewish Labour Movement. They've openly campaigned against the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn. And the JLM, the Jewish Labour Movement, even refused to support Labour candidates in the 2019 general election. There's enough evidence of that in the leaked report. Do you think they're going to get proscribed? No chance. Not that we're in favour of that. We believe free speech and open debate is the best thing at all to discuss issues. Clearly, that shows how the Labour Party remains a very much what Lenin called a bourgeois workers' party. You've got a bourgeois wing, you've got the workers' wing. And under Corbyn, the workers' wing was very strong, and now the other wing is trying to assert itself. But it's very important that we understand that the Labour Party is still the natural home of the working class, unfortunately, as long as the unions are affiliated to it, and as long as the electoral system is what it is. That's why we say, if you don't get chucked out, try to stay. But if you stay, you have to fight. There's no point keeping your head down now, really no point. If you stay in the Labour Party and they let you, you have to fight for democracy and socialism. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome Tony Greenstein, and Tony is speaking from the Labour campaign Free Speech. Thank you, Tony.
Right, thank you, comrades. It's nice to see so many people here today. My name is Tony Greenstein. I was the first Jewish person to be expelled from the Labour Party, but I wasn't the last Jewish person to be expelled from the Labour Party, and that is really what the anti-Semitism witch hunt is about. It's about Israel, it's about Zionism, it's about apartheid, it's not about anti-Semitism. Because, of course, if it was against anti-Semitism, you wouldn't have the Daily Mail, which campaigned in the 1930s to keep Jewish refugees out of Britain. You wouldn't have the Daily Express on side. All the papers who saw that Hitler was not that bad a chap, and he had a point of view. These are the people who supported the fake anti-Semitism campaign. And you know, when I was suspended by John Stolliday, he's now gone to Unison to do the same there, I was told I was suspended for comments I'd made. They didn't tell me what I'd said, but 2 weeks later I read in the Telegraph and the Times that I had compared Israel's marriage laws to that of Nazi Germany. So I told my inquisitor, well yes, the greatest political philosopher of the last century, Hannah Arendt, herself a refugee from Nazi Germany, made exactly that point. So let's be clear. It's not about anti-Semitism, but I have to say, I was suspended under Corbyn. Hundreds of people were suspended under Jeremy Corbyn by buying into the very narrative that was designed to overthrow him. He did himself and no one else a favour. And that is a sad fact. And Momentum today is still carrying that on. They still pretend that when Keir Starmer says he's going to root out anti-Semitism, that it has anything to do with hatred of Jews. We all know they introduced the IHRA. And what is the IHRA? It's about defending Israel by accusing people of anti-Semitism. It has absolutely nothing to do with anti-Semitism itself. And we need to be clear. And if there was any doubt in anyone's mind about what Starmer has done, then the quiet lifting of the suspension a month ago of Trevor Phillips for Islamophobia proves that beyond a doubt. Because if anyone had said about Jews that they were a nation within a nation, or they were not like us, they would have been out of the party in a moment's flash. And yet Trevor Phillips, because he's a buddy of Blair, has been allowed into the party once again. Now, let us be clear about this man. Where is he? The fallen man, Keir Starmer. He's a QC, he's a lawyer, but he's also a liar. He said he stood as the unity candidate. Well, this is no unity. He said he stood on Corbyn's programme. He didn't do that at all. He's a man who got to power through lies. And when we see it, he's unable to lay a glove on Boris Johnson, despite the fact we've had 150,000 people die. Keir, you are utterly useless, and it's time you went. And I see he's now fallen over in shock. Well, that doesn't surprise me, because the project of Starmer is not Labour winning an election, it's driving the left out of the Labour Party and making Labour safe for capitalism. People have to understand that. My final thing really is simply to say this, and I'm going to finish up with a quote from a right-wing Labour leader before Harold Wilson. Those of you who are old enough will have heard of the name of Hugh Gateskill. And I'm going to say this, we are going to fight again to keep the Labour Party on a socialist path and to drive out the right. And I mean, we need to drive out the right. No time for gentle politics. The only thing they understand is what they've attempted to do to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. We're now going to hear from Becky, who's representing the Labour in Exile network, one of the groups threatened with proscription at today's meeting. Thank you, Becky.
Hello everybody, I'm here from the Labour in Exile network. We are people who are in the Labour Party for the moment. Some of us are people who have been suspended. Some of us are people who have been expelled. And what do we all have in common in Labour in Exile network? We're socialists, and the Labour Party doesn't like it. And I read as I was coming up on the train that inside Southside, where we are, David Evans is currently sacking a load of the workers in there because they're going bankrupt, and they brought it on themselves. As long as the trade unions are affiliated to Labour, it is our party. It is not the party of people who do glamour shots for Murdoch's time. It's ours. Anybody here who gets exiled after today because your photograph is put up, come and join the Labour in Exile network. We're not poisonous. In fact, we're very, very nice. Solidarity, comrades.
Thank you, Becky. Now Andrew's here, and thank you for coming, Andrew Feinstein.
Friends, colleagues and comrades, it's at one level great to be here, to be amongst you. At another level, it's awful to be here because of what has happened to the Labour Party under my constituency MP, Keir Starmer. He has done to the party nationally what he has done to the party in his constituency of Holborn and St Pancras. He has divided it. He has destroyed unity in the party, and he has effectively cast out all of those who are to his left, which is probably a majority of the party in the constituency. As you might have gathered from my accent, I am not British, so I'm here as something of an interloper. I am South African, and I served as an ANC Member of Parliament under Nelson Mandela. And I was enormously privileged and honoured to introduce the first ever motion on the Holocaust in the history of the South African Parliament. But the question I ask myself today is, would Nelson Mandela be expelled or suspended from the Labour Party for expressing the view he did after 27 years in jail? Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Would Nelson Mandela be suspended or expelled from the Labour Party for supporting BDS, the very strategy that was absolutely crucial in bringing an end to apartheid in South Africa? I struggle when I see many of us, regardless of our personal histories, regardless of our actual views, labeled by people on the right as anti-Semites. I have lectured at Auschwitz on behalf of the Auschwitz Institute. Auschwitz is where dozens of my mother's family were murdered. But people in the Labour Party call me an anti-Semite. Does that mean that those ultra-Orthodox groups opposed to the existence of the State of Israel are anti-Semites? Does this mean that the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Israelis who are opposed to the occupation of Palestine are anti-Semites? Of course it doesn't. The hypocrisy is not only evident, as Tony was saying a few minutes ago, in the way in which the party readmitted Trevor Phillips. It is not only evidenced in the way in which the party refuses to address any form of Islamophobia within the party or within our broader society. But there is another level of hypocrisy, and that is that we have a member of parliament serving the Labour Party who benefited personally through her family business for acting as an agent for the apartheid state in South Africa. And despite over 100 Labour members writing to the disciplinary unit about the fact that this person participated in upholding the apartheid regime in South Africa, not one of those members has even received the courtesy of a reply. So what we have in the Labour Party is a hierarchy of racism. And there can be no hierarchy of racism. You are either opposed to anti-Semitism, to Islamophobia, to anti-black racism, and to each and every form of discrimination, or you are part of the racism problem. And as we stand here today, the Labour Party is part of the racism problem in this country. I want to end with the words of someone far wiser than myself. Irina Klepfist was a child survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto, where she lost her father and brother. She says, and her words have defined my sense of my own Judaism. Irina says, I have concluded that the way to pay tribute to those we love, who struggled, resisted, and died, is to hold on to their fierce outrage at the destruction of the ordinary life of their people. It is this outrage we must use to fuel our actions and vision whenever we see signs of disruptions of common life. The hysteria of a mother grieving for the teenager who has been shot, a family stunned in front of a vandalized or demolished home, a family separated, displaced, arbitrary and unjust laws that demand the closing and opening of shops and schools, humiliation of a people whose culture is seen as alien and deemed inferior, a people left homeless without citizenship, a people living under military rule. Because of our experience, we recognize these evils as obstacles to peace. At these moments of recognition, we remember the past, feel the outrage that inspired the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto, and allow it to guide us in present struggles. So we, those who are still in the Labour Party, those who have been suspended, expelled, or have never been in the party, but are true anti-racists, as our party attempts to silence Palestinian voices, as our party attempts to silence criticism of Israel and its brutal and illegal occupation, our response to the witch hunt must be to speak out ever louder for a free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Hello, comrades. It's our party, and these warmongers and austerity mongers that oversee Labour governments running capitalism, they've got no right to exclude us from our party. They've got no right to take away our membership of the party, and they've got no right to stifle debate and tell us what we can discuss and what we can't discuss in our meetings. And that applies to constituency Labour parties, and it applies to trade union branches, and all workers' organisations must have free discussion. How are we going to work out what to do, how to end capitalism before it destroys the planet? How are we going to work out what to do unless we can freely discuss all the different ideas that people have? So we're for freedom of discussion. The Labour, I want to talk about vision a little bit. Tony Blair had a vision. He wanted to reverse the foundation of the Labour Party and go back to a two-party system of Tories and Liberals. He wanted to exclude the trade union link and get rid of the socialists. So that's Tony Blair's vision. He hasn't succeeded, has he? He hasn't succeeded. That struggle's still going on. The right wing still want it. Keir Starmer's vision, what's that? Does anybody know? Some people think he's got the same vision as the far right of the Labour Party. I think he wants to be Prime Minister. In the Red Flag song, he says that we say talk about the weak and base, don't we? The weak and base whose minds are fixed on pelf and place. So he's a careerist politician that wants Labour to be in government so he can be in government. I think that's what he wants. Okay, that's his vision. Keir Hardie was in a party that was affiliated to the Labour Party, wasn't it? Keir Hardie was in the Independent Labour Party, which was an affiliate of the Labour Party before it had individual membership. Labour had trade unions, and it was open to all trade unions, it was open to all socialist organisations at that time. And this is, I'm thinking of what he said in 1912 actually, that the Labour Party we should build the Labour Party as a great movement of the working class for socialism. And it's a desperate question now. It might be a pious dream, you might think, but if you don't manage to get rid of capitalism, we don't manage to end the drive of capitalism for constant expansion, then we're in trouble, right? The planet is in trouble. We've got to deal with it. Okay, Keir Hardie's vision. What's my vision? My vision for Labour is similar to Keir Hardie's. That is, we want Labour Party to be open to all working class organisations and to all socialist organisations, so we can have our discussion about how the working class can win and become the ruling class in society. That's what we want. The Labour Party can be transformed so it's not a workers' party led by capitalist politicians anymore. That's what it's always been. We can win this battle in time. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, Stan. I said earlier that JVR had said in a supporting statement that attack on one is an attack on all. I'm really pleased that JVR is here today, and I welcome Mike Cushman.
Greetings, comrades. I've not been suspended from the Labour Party. I've only been placed under investigation. But actually, this isn't for the first time. I think I can claim, actually, a first here. I was first placed under investigation by the Labour Party in 1965 as Secretary of Acton Young Socialists. Can anyone beat that? Can anyone beat 1965? No, well, thank you. Labour has many problems, but today's NEC shows they're not prepared to address any of them. What we have is a policy vacuum. Nothing on halting NHS privatisation, nothing on ending academisation, nothing on the assault on academic freedom, Me Too on COVID, attacking the Labour left, does not address any of the fundamental problems of the Labour Party. In the 1990s and the 2000s, I opposed Blairism. I would now oppose Starmerism if he would bother to tell me what it was. Constituency Labour parties up and down the country are being rigged. We're having corrupt elections for conference party delegates so they can pack conference, so they can ram through anti-democratic policies, anti-democratic rules to stop the left having a voice in our party. There's one thing that we can see that is consistent from Cornwall to London to Cambridge to Yorkshire, and it's the rigging of elections. The right don't have any regard for the rule book. It's just an impediment. The Labour Party believes the rule book like Boris Johnson believes the truth. It would be a good thing, but don't let it get in the way. You know, many members of Jewish Voice for Labour have submitted complaints to the Labour Party about its anti-Semitism, about its belief that only Jews who conform to their narrow stereotype of a Jew is prepared to be a Jew, and anyone who doesn't conform to that stereotype is an anti-Semite. Now I can tell you, one of the defining features of racism is expecting members of a race, well there are no races but those who they define as a race, expecting members of a race to conform to their stereotype. That's the signal thing. If you're black and you don't behave like a black, well, who are you? If you're a Jew and don't behave like they want a Jew to behave, then you're an anti-Semite. I was born a Jew, I was brought up a Jew, I will die a Jew, not in a religious form, but in terms of who I am and my upbringing. I was brought up to support Israel, but I no longer support Israel. Not since '67, not since I saw what the reality of Zionist occupation was, what an affront to human rights and to decency it was. We now know what anti-Semitism is. It's when we, as Jews, sign an open letter of Jewish members of the Labour Party addressed to Ramuna. Now, signing that letter as a Jew is evidence of your anti-Semitism in the latest suspension letter that I've seen. Now, if you can explain that to me, I'd be pleased, because I really cannot work that out. And I don't know if there's anyone in there who will explain that strange logic. We're not fighting on ground of our choosing. Our ground to fight is free debate. It's argument, because we believe we have the arguments that will win, that we have the arguments that will deliver a socialist Labour victory this country needs. Now it's interesting, when Jews won't vote Labour, it's the Labour Party's fault. What we learned from Batley and Spen is when Muslims won't vote Labour, it's the Muslims' fault. You know, I always resort to poetry when I'm really stuck. So let's go back to Dylan Thomas. Do not go silent into that good night, but rage, rage against the dying of the light. Solidarity.
One of the solidarity statements that we've had is from Ken Loach, and we have Gillian Secker who's going to read that for us before we have Pete to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Gillian Secker.
Secretary of Jewish Voice for Labour, and really proud to better read out the statement by our friend and comrade Ken Loach. He says, "I'm sorry not to be with you today. The destruction of democracy in the Labour Party is shameful. Local parties are closed down, their offices replaced or suspended, meetings cancelled, all with little regard to the rule book. Good people are being forced out, some made ill with the pressure. The most principled activists are leaving in tens of thousands. And all this takes place without a word from the mass media. Why? Because Starmer is their man. They know he will change little or nothing. He makes a small debating point, big on the big principles, ending privatisation, rights at work, protecting the environment, a foreign policy based on human rights, international law, all of that, he is silent. He wants a smaller party with no troublesome activists. This attack on party democracy is driven by a determination to appease the power of the establishment. It's a return to the opportunism and support for corporate power of the Blair years. But Starmer, feeble and unimpressive, is no Blair. The Labour Party is one areas of struggle alongside grassroots campaigns and trade unions. The right wing operate in the shadows, but we need to keep telling the truth about what is happening. It is our strongest weapon. Solidarity, from Ken Loach.
Welcome, Pete. Pete, you're here from the Labour Representation Committee. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Esther. I'm actually wearing two hats. I must start off by saying I'm a suspended member. Suspension came after, as chair of the CLP, I allowed our EC and then our GC to do a terrible thing, which was to vote on what they wanted to discuss, and to vote on that once they decided they wanted to discuss it. The next day I was suspended. But I wasn't just suspended for that. Oh no, they actually pulled off the shelf accusations against me based on articles I'd written for Labour Briefing, defending people who'd been witch hunted, like Mark Wadsworth, and for signing things that called Israel an apartheid state. Those were sitting on the shelf, waiting for me to do something else that they could slap on top. And since November, when I was suspended, I hear nothing, like most people. But I'm also here for the Labour Representation Committee, in solidarity with those under threat today, and in solidarity with those who are going to be under threat coming, because quite clearly Keir Starmer prefers attacking the membership to actually developing any policies to attack this government. He prefers to chase around the country speaking to people who last voted in the 90s for Labour and have since stood as a Conservative candidate, to actually allowing members to participate in the discussion of the type of policies we need. It doesn't matter about fire and rehire, climate change, racism, all those crucial issues. No, more important is to purge the party of the left. But we have to, when we stand in solidarity, we stand in solidarity with all those under attack. We don't say, well, I'll defend my organisation and hope that we don't get hit, because that's a recipe for ensuring you do get hit, because that's divide and rule. We have to stand with all those under a threat. We don't have to agree with everything they say, by any means. That's not the point. We have to stand in solidarity against the attempt to purge the party of the left. The left should have the right to organise within the party, just as the right organise within the party. But of course, that doesn't matter to Sir Keir. So solidarity with everybody, and we have to take away from this rally We have to take this into our unions, for instance. There's a very good statement from Unite, which people may not have seen yet, opposing this bans and prescriptions. We have to take it into all our unions. We have to get them to stand up against it. We have to get our MPs and our councillors, where we can, our parties, to stand up against it. Because we will only defeat this attack on the left if we stand together in solidarity. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, Pete. It's great to see so many comrades in the Socialist Appeal here today. Thank you. So now we have Adam Booth from the Socialist Appeal, and Adam's also going to read out a solidarity statement from John McDonnell.
Thanks very much, comrades, for coming today, and as has been said, I'm going to start by giving a solidarity statement that's been sent in by John McDonnell MP of the Socialist Campaign Group of MPs. And John says, "I totally oppose the use of bans and prescriptions to force socialists out of the Labour Party. Labour was founded as a democratic socialist party composed of individuals and groups of socialists drawn from a wide range of political beliefs and analyses. From Fabians to cooperatives to Marxists, the party of Bevan, Attlee, Lasky, Ben has embraced all these traditions and has been stronger for it. Members of the party are supportive of the ideas advocated by Socialist Appeal and other prescribed groups, have loyally worked hard voluntarily for Labour candidates to be elected, and have been at the forefront of many campaigns and trade union struggles. Banning or prescribing members associated with the ideas of Socialist Appeal and other prescribed groups flies in the face of what Labour has always stood for. If any member of the party has broken the party's rules, there are already procedures to deal with this. There is no need for this resort to bans and prescriptions. The question must surely come to mind if those associated with the policies and ideas of these prescribed groups are targeted now, who is next on the list for prescription?" That's from John McDonnell MP. And now I'd like to say a few words, obviously, about our own situation in Socialist Appeal, one of the groups that has been targeted for prescription at today's meeting by Keir Starmer, the only Labour leader, the only political figure probably whose cardboard cutout has more charisma than he. Now, Keir Starmer is obviously a lawyer in trade, and in the legal world there's a term known as double jeopardy, which means that you can't be tried for the same crime twice. And yet, if the right-wing dominated NEC passes this motion today, supporters of Socialist Appeal, such as myself, who were already expelled several years ago and let back into the party, are about to receive a second letter telling us that we've euphemistically been auto-excluded without the right to appeal or any form of natural justice. The last time that we were expelled was in the 2015-2016 Purge, along with thousands of other Corbyn-supporting socialists who were suspended and excluded on trumped-up charges. And in the case of Socialist Appeal, we took the Labour Party to court, and the party lawyers said, after squirming around trying to find a reason why we had to be excluded, they said the only reason we were being excluded was because of the crime of supporting socialism. We were guilty of being socialists. Well, if I'm guilty of that crime, I confess to that. They said that we don't support Labour's aims and values. This is what the right wing say. Now, this is extremely rich coming from the right wing. This is from the Blairites and bureaucrats who sabotaged the 2017 general election. These are the people who relentlessly undermined Corbyn's twice democratically leadership in the last 5 years. These are the people who scrapped the Socialist Clause 4, replacing it with one that calls for praise for the rigours of a dynamic market economy. The same dynamic market economy that Starmer and co are now praising today alongside their patronising flag waving. The right wing accuse us of being organised. They accuse us of being entryous. They accuse us of being a party within a party. But aren't factions like Progress and Labour First also organised? Don't they have influence and funding from outside interests, namely that of big business? Aren't they the entryists on behalf of the Tories and the establishment? Aren't they a party within a party? They are the Tory party in our party. Now, since that initial wave of the purge, we were all let back in. We faced disciplinary panels, we faced proper procedures, and all of these panels agreed that we were legitimate members of the Labour Party, and there was nothing incompatible with our support for socialist appeal and our Labour Party membership. Even Tom Watson, the Witchfinder General, was on one of these panels and had to agree that we deserve to be in the party. Tomorrow, however, we are all expecting, along with thousands of others, to receive a letter informing us of our expulsion once again. Now, this goes way beyond the 3,000 people they're estimating are going to receive such a letter tomorrow. It goes way beyond all of the groups named on the motion today. In other words, this is just the thin end of the wedge. First they are coming for the Marxists, and next they will come for Momentum. That is why it is vital that the whole of the left stands up against these shenanigans, why we unite and fight against these attacks. The aim of Starmer and the right wing is clear. They want to purge the entire left from the Labour Party. They want to expunge socialism from our party. They want to destroy Corbyn's legacy. They want to return Labour to Blairism. In other words, they want to make Labour a safe pair of hands for capitalism, a reserve team for the Tories. That much is already clear from Starmer's attitude over the last year. He spent more time attacking us, the left, than attacking the Tories. He's tried to outflank them on patriotism, outflank them on right-wing economic policies, tried to provide constructive opposition on the pandemic, which means no opposition at all to this murderous, criminal government. Starmer and the right wing have nothing to offer. They defend capitalism, a crisis-ridden, rotten system that is killing us, that is destroying our planet. All they have is reheated Blairism that is destroying our party. They are driving Labour into the ground. They lost in Hartlepool. They scraped a narrow victory in Batley and Spen. And now the so-called electable Keir Starmer is still 20 points behind the Tories. But they don't care. They don't care at all, because their only concern is for the left to be destroyed. For them, it is rule or ruin. But we won't be intimidated by this aggression and this repression. These attacks just make us even more determined to transform the Labour Party and to transform society along socialist lines. They can try to block and ban as many of us as they like, but as the great French writer Victor Hugo said, you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. And the ideas of Marxism and socialism, they are the ideas of the future. The ideas of Blairism and capitalism, they are the ideas of the past. Marxism and socialism are in the DNA and the lifeblood of our movement. It's the ideas that Starmer and the right wing represent that are toxic, that are alien, that are poisonous to our movement and to the interests of working people. That is why the fight against these bans and expulsions must be also a fight against the right wing. We say no more concessions to these people, no more compromises, no more false unity with these agents of big business and these saboteurs. The only unity we need is that of rank and file activists, of the forces of socialism and the left against the Blairites and the bureaucrats. So I come from Socialist Appeal to make a socialist appeal. For those watching at home, join us in the fight for socialism. Join us in saying, Starmer out, socialists in. 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 Starmer out.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Socialist Appeal. We are now going to hear from some comrades who have their own individual stories to tell about their experiences with the Labour Party. First of all, I'm very pleased to welcome my comrade Harriet Bradley from Bristol. Thank you, Harriet.
Hello, comrades and friends. It's wonderful to see you here and to feel the solidarity between us. I I come from Bristol. I've been suspended twice, but with the help of JBL I managed to get back in again. But I'm here to call for the reinstatement of my friends and allies in Bristol who have been suspended as part of this appalling right-wing purge of the left. And make no mistake, that's what's happening. Therefore, out for all of us, all our friends and comrades. In the Corbyn area, Bristol West, my constituency party, was the second largest constituency party in Britain. So they came for us. In November, they suspended the officers from Bristol North West, Bristol East and Bristol West. They suspended them because on the spurious ground of talking about things they shouldn't talk about. And then they suspended another lot of people because they called for the sacking of the regional officer, the notorious Phil Guskin, a man who is committed to overturning the rule book at any possible occasion. If there are any comrades here from the southwest, they will know how terribly undemocratic this man is. Of the 10 people suspended, 4 were council candidates. The AGMs were stopped. The meetings were cancelled. And at the very last moment, right-wing people were parachuted into the council selection process. Some of these people hadn't even been in the party for a month. They had no experience of activism, of campaigning, like the comrades who were suspended, who are among the finest and bravest activists and campaigners I've ever met. And of course, like everybody else, since November they have heard nothing at all about their fake suspension. What happened? The result was that Labour lost an enormous number of seats in the council elections and lost its majority on Bristol City Council. It's also lost thousands of young members who were very pro-Corbyn and who left and joined the Green Party. In fact, Labour in Bristol has been shafted. It is no more. It's been taken over by right-wing people who've done nothing for years and years but sit on their backsides. So, what are we to do? Well, you've heard people say, and I agree with everything that's been said, we have to fight. We cannot let the left be destroyed. We need to fight in our trade unions. We need to fight in our workplaces. We need to support our comrades. We have to carry on. We have to do this because only socialism can save our planet. Only socialism can end inequality. Only socialism can fight racism effectively. We have to fight to save our planet. Please do not give up, everybody. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're in this and we will not go away. Solidarity.
Thank you, Harriet. I'm one of the suspended members from Bristol. Next we are going to hear from Sheila, who's come from Hove, and some of you might have heard about some of the things that happened in Hove. Here's Sheila.
Brief introduction. I was a Labour councillor in the old Brighton Borough Council when Kinnock told me to go away and not to come back for 5 years in about 1992. So I didn't bother, but I just came back as many others did to vote for Jeremy Corbyn in as leader and the inspiration that he gave us. During that time, When I joined, the left had control of what is now Hove and Portslade CLP, where I live. The left had control of that. We had good policies, we had good meetings. But what has happened since, it's gone from petty to vicious to ridiculous and vicious. So for example, in my own branch, at an EC meeting of just 4 people, the secretary the chair told the secretary, or Dibble and Grub as I call them, Dibble told Grub to mute Sheila permanently, and that was in a meeting of 4 people, which he duly did, but I could unmute myself. So then every time he muted me, I muted myself, so then I got into trouble for laughing, because it was sort of quite funny. But in amongst this, Dibble and Grub, they held a meeting supposedly of the EC, decided the whole of the branch agenda for the year, didn't invite any of the women members along, and when 2 of us protested that was sexist, we were told that was silly. And you know, so all we could do was laugh again, really. Subsequently to that, what I've witnessed in that GC is people like Becky being sniggered at and mocked by the right-wingers. Nothing happened. I was physically threatened in my branch by a male member, and that was in front of 2 serving Labour councillors, and nothing has happened about that either, in spite of complaints. Now we're in the position now, what happened, I was women's officer for 2 years, and I held the most successful CLP event ever at Labour Party conference, many of you might have attended, in 2019 on domestic abuse, where we had Diane Abbott, Shami Chakrabarti, Dawn Butler, the Chief Superintendent, people from Rise, a barrister, the most successful event ever, and they couldn't attack me for that. But what they did, they accused me of stealing the money that was collected in the whip round, which I'd gone straight from there straight to the conference because I was a delegate, and our branch secretary had in fact paid it into the branch Labour Party, but that didn't stop them bringing it up and attacking me for 13 whole months after that, and that was my reward for holding a really successful seminar on a really serious issue which has gone through the roof since COVID, which is domestic abuse. We are now at the stage where, I'll just tell you one more thing actually. What happens at our CLP meetings, we had a woman speaking, she's the founder of Brighton Housing Trust, she's in her 80s, she's very well known and respected in Brighton for her campaigning work, lifelong campaigning. She was cut short very bad-temperedly by the chair twice and told to stop, and the reason it was so urgent that she had to stop speaking was because the chair, Kim Bolton, she wanted us to blow kisses at Peter Kyle, self-confessed MP, friend of Sussex Israel, because it was his bloody birthday. So most of us just switched our cameras off and didn't bother with that. But that's the level of the sycophancy within Hove CLP. Now this Thursday, we have a CLP meeting with no motions, no officer reports, because since spending a year attacking myself, the media officer, the political education officer, all of the left officers, they've been in post since March and they've not organised one single event, not one single meeting, not one single workshop. They've done absolutely nothing. Hove and Portslade does not exist. It's like a little, I think some of them, I think they meant to join the Women's Institute and haven't realised they made a mistake yet, so that's the sort of mentality of them. But more importantly than this is what they did. Last month we had a motion that was unanimously passed by our Hove branch, and it was to condemn the blockades and the attacks on Israel. It was to support the boycott, support sanctions, and the chair decided that this would encourage further anti-Semitic behaviour. Now what that anti-Semitic behaviour was that could be further displayed, nobody knows. She was backed up by Scott Homer at Region, who said that to discuss Israel would make some members, especially Jewish members, feel unsafe. And I'm sorry, but I still don't know how you mean anyone feels unsafe in a Zoom meeting. And if they feel unsafe in talking about Israel, let them go to Gaza and let them sit there with one of the women, one of the children that are being bombed, that are being starved, that are being mutilated, that are being oppressed like this. And this is what they want to expel us for. I'm not suspended yet. I've been quite a low-level figure since I rejoined the Labour Party. But I am under investigation for, what could it be? Oh yeah, anti-Semitism. And all I did was repost a post from Asa Stanley on Palestine. And they accused me of 3 further offences and labelled them C, D and E, which don't actually exist in the rule book. So I've asked them what these offences are, where I can find them. I've never received a response, but I suspect that I will get a response very soon after today, and that's just the way it goes, because none of us want to be expelled. We do want to stay and fight in the Labour Party, but so be it. We have to have a voice, and there's no point in saying that we support free speech if we're not prepared to say what we think ourselves publicly. So, and all I can say is, on just one note, I could never turn my back on Corbyn. I'm sickened to see some of these posters today calling him a racist, the most non-racist, decent man that ever in politics. And thanks to the Labour Party officers and PLP members at Sabotage 2017, this is personal. I'm minus £30,000 in my pocket as waspy compensation that Corbyn was going to get in, but that's not the only reason. That I just wish Starmer would just sod off, basically. So he's got no business being in the Labour Party. Thank you for listening, and solidarity to everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Sheila. Sandy Palmer.
Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to be brief. This is like cathartic for me. You know when you've been suspended and it told you mustn't tell anybody anything about it? Never mind, it was a bloody request. Never mind, it was a request. It wasn't. I read it again last night. On pain of death, will you share this with anybody? And so this feels fabulous for me. My name's Sandy Palmer. I'm from Hemel Hempstead, CLP. I'm an ex-chair, and I was suspended in October of last year. Thank you. Not really celebrating it, but now just briefly, got the letter of suspension. I was supposed to have chaired a meeting discussing the anti-Semitism panorama programme. Never happened. None of that ever happened. I could get numerous witnesses to say that never happened. Every month I send this lot an email saying, can you give me the date of this meeting? Can you tell me anything about this meeting? Nothing. They ignore you, they just leave you in limbo. And it's just appalling. And the worst thing, it's bad enough for me, but having heard some of the stories, what people have had to put up with, it's pretty devastating, and solidarity to everybody who's had to suffer this. But the last speaker was right, we need to speak out. What are they afraid of? A fully funded, publicly run NHS, a Green New Deal for jobs in the economy? What are they frightened of? We're a fairly disparate group in some ways, but I know the core of us all want the same thing for the people of this country. I'm not sure this lot do. I'm not sure what this lot want. So I just wanted to be brief. Thank you so much for listening to me, and come on, Hemel CLP, fight it, fight it.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I think we've got Greg now, haven't we? Welcome, Greg. Greg's come from, is it Brighton?
Greg Hadfield from Brighton. L00916888, if they're listening. I was here, this is not new, I was here 5 years ago protesting to the NEC about the unjust suspension of Brighton and Hove District Party. 6,200 members at the time. And what had we done wrong? We'd elected pro-Corbyn supporters of the new leadership team. I was elected secretary. The other 9 were elected. All of us got 2 out of 3 votes from 600 plus people at a meeting. This was at the height of the coup. This was just after Starmer, a new MP, a little known MP, became one of the last MPs to resign from jobs we didn't actually know they had, because everyone else was doing it. I think some people in the party in this building who are complicit in a criminal conspiracy against the members, I think some of the people in this building thought he's our kind of leader, and now they've got him. He's trapped. He's trapped by the right wing. Now, obviously, I support Starmer out. Starmer's resignation is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We don't have to choose who is the least bad of the career-minded, self-serving, backbench MPs who want to do it all over again, only this time with less competence. Because 5 years ago I knew what was coming down the track, and I was suspended the following month so that I couldn't stand in the next re-elections of the Brighton and Hove City Party, which we won. We won Hove, we won Brighton Pavilion, we won Brighton Kent Town. It took us 8 months, we won. And what did they do? They started picking off individuals one by one, some of them here today. They targeted, you know, the black women, why not? The Jews, why not? But also, mainly, the socialists. Lord McNichol, now David Evans, preside over a pyramid of vile, anti-democratic silencing. So I was suspended for the 3rd time. So after 18 months, I was unsuspended. Finally got a hearing, 2 months after I found out what I'd been accused of, all of which happened after I'd been suspended, and the main thing was a single tweet in the context of how the deeply flawed so-called definition of anti-Semitism. Because I tweeted once to see if that definition really did chill free speech, because everyone at the time was saying no, it doesn't. I tweeted, the state of Israel is a racist endeavour and always has been. That was the main charge against me. There were people from here at my hearing who couldn't even read the IHRA definition. They thought I'd cut and pasted. The panel found me not guilty of anti-Semitism. As soon as it was announced, some of the people who made those charges quit the Labour Party and became independent or Change UK or whatever. They're the people Starmer wants back in our party. I'm just glad I'll never be in the same party as Warren Morgan ever again. But then when I got suspended for the 3rd time, I got 57 questions, 29 items of evidence. It's up on the web, please read it. What was I suspended for? What were most of the questions about? They were about a single tweet that said, what did it say? The state of Israel is a racist endeavour and always has been. The same tweet that a panel had decided was not, of course, anti-Semitic. Will I get a hearing? Well, celebrate with me a birthday, never mind Peter Carl's birthday. Today is my birthday of a year of suspension, July the 20th last year. And what they do is they suspend you, leak the information to Lee Harpin, to a blogger in Brighton, who then make up reasons that they think you've been accused of. They can say anything. They can say anything, because you're not allowed to speak. It's confidential. Apart from that email from the press office here to Lee Harpin saying, yeah, Hatfield's been suspended again. And then, finally, after a year, I'm now put up, look for it. It must have taken one of these employees weeks and months to troll through everything I've ever said or written. And the best they can come up with is apparently I blind copied in 4 of my Patcham branch Labour Party members to an email I sent to the Secretary of the branch Labour Party. I described Ewan Phillips. I responded when someone raised Ewan Phillips of Labour, so-called Labour Against Anti-Semitism. I just said, on Twitter, a suspension offence. It says anyone brought the Labour Party in disrepute. It is David Evans, Lord McNichol, the apparatus around them, the highly paid apparatus around them, and the forces behind them. And they're the forces against democracy, they're the forces against socialism, and most importantly, they're the forces against every one of us here. And they don't care about the human cost. They don't see the human cost of what it does to Becky and Alex and Sheila and everyone else in Brighton and Hove. Endlessly picked on, endlessly. So what I say to you now is, let's get rid of Starmer, but let's prepare for what follows, because it's going to be worse. We're going to have a resist event, theresistevent.com, in 3 days in Brighton. As a Labour Party member since 2006, I am proud to be helping organise that. I'm proud to help organise it with Labour Left Alliance, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, Labour Campaign for Free Speech, Labour in Exile Network, Resist, Labour Party Marxists, and any other socialist group that wants to join us. So please, come to Brighton and have a good time. Don't worry about the Labour Party conference. Come to Brighton and have a good time at the Rialto. Meanwhile, let's just remember, we are stronger together. We are stronger together. We are socialists together. Let's stay together.
Thank you, Fred. See you at Resist at the Rialto in Brighton. We now have, I was going to say that one of the suspended CLPs was Thanet, Norman Thomas was the chair, and we now have Jane Lee from Thanet to talk to us. Thank you, Jane.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm here talking really, Norman himself would have come, but you know, anyone who knows Norman and Christine knows that it's sometimes very difficult, and Christine wasn't up to it. It would have been too much of a stretch for her today to come. Christine is our disabilities officer, and she has been expelled from the party. She was expelled for tweeting to Chris Williamson, good luck. That was enough, out she went. But of course the real reason that she was expelled was because she had been under observation for some time because she's a friend of Jackie Stewart. So there are a lot of people who you know, have been under surveillance, let's say, as everything they do, everything they email, everything they tweet is picked over until they can find a reason to get rid of her. I was suspended myself. I was the women's officer of the South Thanet CLP, and I took over when Christine stood down as chair after she was expelled, and I lasted, as chair, I lasted 2 meetings, and then of course I was suspended when we debated the motion and passed a motion to restore the whip to Jeremy Corbyn. Not competent business. We are told what we can speak of in our meetings by our regional office, and I want to bring this forward in this discussion today, that one of our problems is corrupt regional offices. That corrupt regional officers are the cold face of the war against us. And it's there that we have really to resist and to stand up to them. Our battle started 3 years ago when we selected a member, Dr. Rebecca Gordon-Nesbitt, to be our parliamentary party candidate, and they didn't like her. They had already decided in the regional office who they wanted us to select. They suspended Rebecca immediately as an anti-Semite. We felt it was made easier because she's half Iranian, and so she was suspended, could no longer stand, but we fought it, she fought it. We lost our organise, you know what that is, everybody, the only way you can get in touch with each other. We lost all of our organise, we couldn't get in touch with each other, that's been the case for 2.5 years. But we've gone on anyway. And eventually Rebecca won her case, and we reselected her. She got an even bigger majority, and that was the end of it. After that, they did everything they could to persecute us. I can remember in the 2019 election receiving leaflets for South Thanet, to distribute in South Thanet, I mean, that were actually printed for the candidate in South Shields. All sorts of petty sabotage came from our regional office, and it continues. It has continued until now. It has almost completely killed off our CLP. So please, it's your regional offices that you must fight first, as well as demanding the publication of the Ford report and the whip by Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you very much.
Now we have some comrades from North West Cambs and Peterborough here today. Heather, Lyndon, you're each going to talk to us. Thank you.
Yeah, we are speaking for a group of members in North West Cambridgeshire and Peterborough CLPs. There's nothing poisonous about any of us. We have spent the whole of our time as members campaigning to get Labour candidates elected both to Parliament and to our local council. Our CLPs are barely functioning at the moment. There have been no AGMs. This is largely because of the actions taken against members over the last 6 months and the failure to deal with any investigations related to them in a timely manner. Leaving aside the false charges that are the pretext for those suspensions, the process itself is being used to abuse active members. Last week, a group of suspended members from our 2 CLPs sent a message to today's NEC meeting. Colin will read extracts from that message.
Our email to the NEC regarding the unacceptable treatment of party members. On the 23rd of April, 14 members of our 2 CLPs were suspended and made subject to a confidential investigation by Labour's governance and legal. The confidential nature of that investigation was made perfectly clear in those suspension letters. You'll all know that. On the 28th of April, just 3 working days later, then again on the 29th and the 30th, allegations against us appeared in news outlets, starting with the Jewish News on the 28th. All 14 of the suspended members were named. The names of other local members previously suspended earlier this year in January and again at the beginning of April appeared alongside those suspended on the 23rd. The same allegations of anti-Semitism were applied to all. Labour sources were quoted in the articles, adding to the injustice. The data breach prejudices all our cases because it assumes guilt, especially as the allegations were supported by those statements from the Labour sources. But we feel the actions of the party towards the whole group display complete contempt for members and its own declared process, with no semblance of fairness to the accused. Disputes, far from taking an impartial position on this by its absence of action, agrees with the press statements and is happy for all members to be named and smeared by allegations which are not proven. We have asked the NEC members to acknowledge that the data breach is in contravention of the party's own stated process and of data protection law. Secondly, a correction of the false allegations and an apology to the Labour source for the Labour source statements in the news outlets. 3, immediate action to send draft charges to the 2 members suspended on April the 1st. They still don't know what they're suspended for. And 4, action in the case of members suspended since January with no communication from GLU following their response to charges. Signed, Peterborough CLP and North West Cambs members.
Just to follow on from that, to say when we had our, when it came into the newspaper, the headline was "A Stain on Our City." And this was before anyone had actually even received the allegations.
We have not had a response from the party to any previous communications, so we are not expecting one now. We have to keep reminding them just how undemocratically the party is functioning. We have to keep reminding them of their duty of care the party has to all its hard-working members. We have to keep reminding them because so far it appears they are not listening. This is a democratic socialist party that has been taken over by a malign faction trying to silence the voice of members. We will not be silenced.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to try and be quick. I joined the Labour Party in September 2015, almost 55 years old. Never voted before in my life, never involved in any political parties before in my life, until Jeremy Corbyn came along and changed my mind. I'm an ex-Falklands War veteran. I went to the Falklands in 1982, and I was prepared to die for my country, whether I wanted to or not. That's what I was prepared to do. And there's people who I know very well who are still in the South Atlantic who have never come home. So when I read things in the newspaper from the Labour Party spokesman saying that people like me are poisonous and have got warped world views and that type of language, I think to myself, is this really the type of Labour Party that the people of this country would be looking for to represent them? To represent the proper people of this country? People who are prepared to go and fight for them and defend the people of this country, people like me and people like my comrades who are still lying in their watery graves at the bottom of the South Atlantic. Is that the type of Labour Party that Keir Starmer wants the people of this country to follow? There's 17 million people in this country who don't vote. I was one of them for 40 odd years of my adult life. Are they going to attract people like me? Do they want to represent those people? Those people are the ones who are the most affected by the lack of socialist policies. Those people are the people that we should be stood up for and working for and dying for with every sinew in our body. And we are getting expelled from the Labour Party because of it. The Labour Party needs to get its act together. If the Labour Party can't treat its members with dignity, and if the Labour Party doesn't believe in democracy, and if the Labour Party is unable to stand up to scrutiny and accountability, how on earth are they going to be strong enough to represent the country if they get into power? So, I've got a t-shirt on here today which says, "It's my party, and I'll fight if I want to." Thanks to Tina Workman, who designed it. Thanks, Tina. But I stand by that sentiment, and I changed the habit of a lifetime, and I'm going to stay here until these people up here drag me out in a box. Part of the imperialist system in this country is to break your spirit. They don't want you to fight, they want you to give in. They want you to be outraged. They want you to be disgusted. They want you to be so disgusted that you're going to walk away and save them the bloody problem of trying to fight you. Don't do it. Don't give in to bullies. Bullies are cowards. You're the strong ones. We are the strong ones. If you believe in democracy, stand up for democracy. If you believe in free speech, stand up for free speech. If you believe in not being shut down, don't close yourself down. Solidarity, comrades, from a brand new socialist.
Hello everybody, I'm here today to start off by saying that the Labour Party is one that has always been founded on the trade union movement and on socialism. Before Blair, the clause 4 of the party directly advocated for it, and after Blair, it still advocates for democratic socialism. But unfortunately, the left wing of this party today will be betrayed. Massive left-wing organisations like Unite, like Momentum, have stood against these prescriptions, and yet it is no surprise, it will be no surprise to any of us here today when Starmer and the National Executive Committee votes to prescribe some of the strongest far-left organisations in the Labour Party today. The Socialist Appeal and the rest of the passionate left find themselves today under fear of prescription. Ultimately, the left wing of this party is young, it is vocal, it provides some of the strongest activism in this nation, but more than that, it has campaigned for and supported this party for ages, since its founding. Now we've seen whole CLP branches suspended, as you will have heard from the previous speakers today, and it will be no surprise to anyone here when soon the administration of this party comes after Momentum, comes after JVL, like Neil Coyle's been advocating for, and comes after the whole of the left wing. So my question is, why treat the membership like this? Why surrender voters? Why surrender subscriptions? Why surrender the core demographic of the Labour Party? It's not to benefit the party, but it's not to benefit the country. It's to benefit the right wing, and it's to benefit the billionaires. It's to benefit careerists like Starmer, who supported radical economic policy until they entered office. It's to protect those very same people from the left-wing, rank-and-file criticism that has given this country this party its backbone since its founding. It's to prevent CLPs and conferences from implementing left-wing socialist policies throughout the party democracy. And it's to prevent a meaningful criticism of the Tory party and of neoliberalism in this country. More than anything though, it's to prevent Labour from being able to oppose billionaires, from being able to oppose business interests, which the socialists of this nation stand so firmly against, which people like Starmer and Blair have always been supported by, and which have always, and billionaires which have always worked to support the right wing of the party. We won't be going without a fight. And all who support a democratic Labour Party, one that listens to its members, one that fights the Tories and not the Marxists, one that advocates for policies that uplift the people of this nation, I urge all these people to fight tooth and nail against these purges, to sweat blood, to protect our party from the right-wing sabotage that we see today. Thank you very much.
Doing?